Okay, I need to be a little tactful with what we're going to talk about in today's video because it is going to trigger some people who watch this. And I can promise you right now, I've not completely lost my marbles. I'm not divorced from reality. The truth is, I've been at both ends of the spectrum of what we're going to discuss. I know what it's like at the bottom end. I know how painful it is at the bottom end. I know also how much hard work it takes to get to the top end of the spectrum. And at the top end of the spectrum, you have to ask more questions. There are certain things that you're going to have to do to be able to maximize your position, right? So that's just a warning straight off the bat. Now, this is only a video that I'm making purely because I got a text message from a client of mine this morning. She finds herself in this exact position. The text message had a link in it that linked to a video by the Financial Times, and it explored Henrys. So Henrys are people who are high earners, not rich yet. So people effectively earning 100K plus, but 100K doesn't feel like it's going far enough to raise a family and to effectively have a good lifestyle. Again, I know this is going to be triggering. And I've not lost my marbles, I promise you. I'm fully aware that the average wage in the UK right now is what? £35,000, something like that. We're talking people who earn three times that. I'm completely aware of that. But I do think there is merit in having this discussion. And I will be giving a few tips. If you find yourself, you say, actually, hang on a second, I'm a Henry. I'm going to give you a few tips that will help with managing the tax position as well. So to start this off, let's just look at the video that the Financial Times posted on this topic.
You'd think earning £100,000 a year would make life comfortable, maybe even luxurious. But for Britain's Henrys, these are high earners not rich yet. It's not quite that simple. In fact, hitting six figures can make your finances worse. Here's why. Once you earn over £100,000, the government starts clawing back your personal tax allowance, the first £12,570 of your income that's normally tax-free. For every £2 you earn above the threshold, you lose £1 of that allowance. So by the time you reach £125,140, your tax-free income is gone. Add in 40% income tax, 2% national insurance, and for many a 9% student loan repayment, and you're looking at a marginal tax rate of up to 71% on every extra pound. That means you're only taking home 29 pence of every extra pound you earn.
Now, I know that people will have their little violins out for those people who are earning over £100,000. I get it, because we seem to be in a society where there is the assumption if you're earning £100,000 plus that you're in the top 1%, and that isn't true. Actually, top 1% is way, way higher than that. But I get the sentiment. Now, I found myself in this position probably in 2014, 2015 for the very first time in my life. And this is me coming from the fact that I was fostered, I've been homeless, I struggled with debt, I just didn't really understand money. I don't have a university degree, but somehow I found myself in Canary Wharf working for a wealth management firm, an investment house. And in the 5 years I was there, I worked my way up to the executive team. And it was very much a surprise to me to know that once I earned over £100,000, that my personal allowance was effectively gone, like overnight. So you go from earning paying, I should say, 40% tax to 60% tax just like that. And for many people who aspire to get to £100,000 per year, like I did, because it was a big aspiration, because the automatic assumption is if I earn over £100,000, well, I'm quote unquote rich, right? But it doesn't feel like that anymore in the modern age. And that's a byproduct of a ton of things: inflation, cost of living crisis, you name it. And this is just the reality that people are facing right now. And again, I'm sure violins are out and people are saying, well, if you're earning £100,000, you should count yourself lucky. Absolutely. I completely get it. But if you are earning at that level and you have children, well, actually, it gets just that little bit worse as well.
And if you've got children, it gets worse. The moment your adjusted net income crosses £100,000, you also lose access to 30 hours of free childcare for kids aged 3 and 4, and nothing at all for under 3s. That benefit is entirely withdrawn. It's no wonder some high earners are capping their salaries at £99,000. HMRC data suggests it's a real trend, people actively choosing not to earn more just to avoid this so-called tax cliff edge. So while £100,000 might sound like a golden ticket, For many Henrys, it's more like a financial trapdoor, where earning more can actually leave you worse off. And until the rules change, some might find that the smartest financial move is to earn just a little less.
Now, rule change. Are we likely to see that with everything that's going on right now? Every fiber in my bone says absolutely not. And again, people will be watching this saying, well, good. If you're earning £100,000 a year, you don't deserve any tax breaks. You don't deserve to pay any less in tax. And that right there is a conversation onto its own. Now, here's the reality, and this is what I do want to get into the mix of in this video. And again, I'm open in the comment section for you to put across your view, because again, this is very polarizing. I've been on both ends of the spectrum, and the realities at each end I completely understand. But here's one of the main things that I do want to talk about here. This definitely applies to people who are in a 9 to 5 job. Because in a 9 to 5 job, if you're on PAYE, you're kind of restricted on the things that you can do to reduce that tax burden, or how you take your income to reduce the tax burden. If you're self-employed, you run your own business, you have more mechanisms, more levers that you can pull to be able to reduce the amount of tax that you pay. You can pay yourself, yes, in a salary, but you can also take dividends. There are things that you can do. So people who are in a 9 to 5 earning good money with £100,000 plus, you're kind of stuck because you've got no levers to pull. And I think that feeds directly into one of the main points that I want to make on this video, is that what does this do for people's aspirations to actually want to do well? And I think that's one of the big issues that we have to really contend with in our conversations, both as a society and certainly in the political sphere. Because I remember when I started my career in banking, my first job was a cashier in a Portland building society in Eastbourne. And I think I was earning something like maybe 18 or 19,000 pounds as my first job back then. And that was a long time ago. But you fast forward to today and where I am, along my journey, I always had this thing in the back of my head that if I could earn £100,000, then I'm rich and I'll have a really good lifestyle. I'm successful, like career-wise, financially successful to a certain extent, right? But what does this do with the reality of today for people earning at that level? What does that do to aspiration? Because my fear is this. What we're saying to the younger generation is, if you earn £100,000 plus, we're going to tax the hell out of you, and you're going to lose certain benefits if you have children. And in today's society, where you need two people to go to work to be able to cover the bills, it's not like back in the day where, dad could go out or mum could go out and earn that money and one parent stays at home. It's just not conducive anymore because the world has changed. So we have to acknowledge that. And again, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section around this as well, because I don't think it's going to get any better. They mention change to the rules. Every fiber in my bone, based on what we're seeing in the political space, in the political space, based on everything we're hearing around the fiscal black hole that Rachel Reeves needs to plug, I don't see taxes coming down anytime soon. If anything, economists are advocating for an increase in taxes. So how do we make all of this worthwhile from an aspirational point of view? Now, the good news is there are certain things that you can do, and this is going to be aimed at people who are PAYE, so you're in a 9 to 5 job. Here are 3 things for you to consider. Now, I'm just going to caveat this. I am not an accountant. I used to be a financial advisor. This is a tax issue, so you need tax advice specifically. But here's the first thing you can do. Consider something like a salary sacrifice. And in this example, I'm going to use if you're earning, say £130,000. At £130,000, your personal allowance is completely gone. So you are firmly in that 60% tax threshold. Now, what you want to do with salary sacrifice is, and this will work if you're getting, say, like a bonus or something like that, you've got to sit down and work out the personal finances, because if finances are tight at that level of earnings, you're going to be sacrificing part of your salary so it doesn't actually end up in your account. It's not paid to you. So you would typically salary sacrifice into something like a pension, for example. But you need to make sure that you don't actually need that sum of money. Now, with a salary sacrifice, what you're aiming for is you're aiming to bring your adjusted income, your adjusted net income, to £100,000, because again, £100,000 is where you start to lose your personal allowance. So in this case, you're looking to sacrifice £30,000 to bring you below that portion where you start to lose that personal allowance. Now, if you were to do that, it would save you around about £12,600 in tax. But again, you're going to have to look at your personal finances to make sure that you can actually make it work, because if you need that £30,000, this equation may not work. Now, you might take advice and figure out, well, okay, I can afford to salary sacrifice something like 10 or 15 or £20,000. You're still going to be above that threshold. You'll still lose some of your personal tax, but you'll be able to look at the numbers for what they are and see if it actually works for you. The second thing you can do, and we talk about this all the time, is, and to be honest, it doesn't really it doesn't work for everyone. And that is maxing out your pension allowance. So the pension allowance, the amount that you can pay into your pension, is now £60,000 a year. It used to be 40. It's now £60,000. Now you have to be earning over £60,000 in order for you to use this. But if you're able to max out your annual pension allowance because the money's not hitting your account, you should adjust your income adequately enough so you don't actually lose that personal allowance. Now, again, it's worthwhile noting that if you do that into your pension, you're maxing out your pension allowance in that way. You're not going to be able to touch the money till 57 under current legislation right now. So again, you need to work out whether or not you can make that figure work, the finances work with that kind of contribution into your pension. Future, you will definitely thank you, because the money will be invested, and that £60,000 over the years will be able to compound and become a much, much larger amount of money. The other thing you can do is you can do specialist investments, but again, you need to have the capital for this. So I'm talking about EIS's VCTs here. With those things, you get tax relief, so you can claim up to 30% back of your of the investment amount against your tax. But again, with EIS's VCTs, they are very specific investment vehicles. They're designed to do specific things. So to effectively support new venturing business, new burgeoning businesses, which means that sometimes they can carry quite a risk. So you've got to make sure that you're comfortable with the level of risk, because it's not just about the tax element to it. Yes, you could be able to have tax relief of 30%, but actually, if you're going to lose money in the investment, it might not actually be worthwhile, depending on how much you actually invest into it. Now, on both of those, the maximum investment is on an EIS £1 million, and on a VCT £200,000. So on the VCT side, for example, if you were to invest something like 50 grand into a VCT, then you could obviously claim back 30% tax relief on the amount that you invested, which would mean that you'd be able to get something like £15,000 tax relief, which for the right people with the right financial setup could be quite significant indeed. But again, you've got to make sure that you're okay with where the money's going and the risk that you're taking on. Really important that you take advice on this, okay? Just don't, maybe look at what I've said here, then go and chat GPT how to do an EIS. I mean, you wouldn't be able to do an EIS or a VCT without taking any financial advice anyway, because you just can't do those things off the shelf. So you're going to need advice with it, but hopefully that helped. On a wider note, just trying to cap off this video, I would generally like to know what your thoughts and feelings are. And I'd like to know, depending on your view, based on where you are on the spectrum. Like I said, I've been at the lower end of the spectrum. I know how difficult and hard it is at that level, and it's definitely an aspirational thing to try and get to the top end of the spectrum. And what we're talking about here is we're talking people earning, in this example, £130,000. There are people that earn a lot more than that. And I think on your journey, it's one of those difficult ones, because yes, we're adverse to paying taxes because the system doesn't work, so it doesn't feel like your money's being put to good use. I think the attitude towards this would be very, very different if the NHS was working and we had enough police officers on the streets and the social fabric of society felt like it was actually working as intended. But that's just not the reality that we find ourselves in now. So look, give me your views down below. I don't expect anyone to be showing any sympathy to anyone who actually earns 100K plus, but I also understand the pain and the situation of people in that arena, because I have a lot of friends in that same environment earning over £100,000, and they're still having to make difficult financial decisions, although it's a different type of difficult financial decision. Anyway, I'm going to stop rambling. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section down below. Hope you enjoyed this. Catch you next week. Cheers.